Welcome back, class. Mr. Rasmussen here. This is going to be part 2 of Unit 3. We're going to be talking about organic compounds. Now, if you really enjoy chemistry and you continue on with chemistry in your life, you'll probably take an introduction to chemistry class, and then after that, you will take an organic chemistry class, probably the second class you take. And this class is all based around one atom. So everything you talk about in organic chemistry is based around the atom carbon and its interesting chemistry. Carbon's a really unique atom. It forms 4 bonds, which is sort of unique, and it's sort of ubiquitous in things. Because of its chemistry, it can form these huge complex molecules that allow life to exist on this planet. So carbon is a fantastic atom, has really interesting chemistry, and you'll learn about that in organic chemistry. So if we use the term organic, it means something contains carbon. So if we use organic, it means that it has carbon within it. So let's talk a little bit about what makes carbon so unique. Organic compounds are molecules that contain the atom carbon. So we just talked about that. So carbon right here has an atomic number of 6, which means it has 6 protons in its nucleus. It's got an average atomic mass of 12.1, which means it has 6 neutrons and normally 6 electrons. And because of those 6 electrons, it has 4 electrons in its outer shell, which means it has 4 empty spots to fill, which allow it to bond with or form 4 other bonds. So carbon has really interesting chemistry. Carbon's essential to living things. Carbon is the backbone that makes up all of our organic molecules. And the reason why carbon is essential to living things is because of this fact that it can form 4 bonds with 4 other atoms. We are going to see huge, long, complex molecules, like huge, long carbon chains, or we can find carbon ring-type structures where, whoops, this is not going to allow me to do the ring. I'm going to run out of room. But we can form carbon rings because of this 4 other bonds. And because of this 4 bonds, it forms these huge, large, complex structures. Now, what we're going to talk about mainly are these 4 types of organic compounds. And we're going to get through a couple today, and then we'll move on with a couple a little bit later. So, there are 4 types of organic compounds that are formed because of carbon. And the first one is carbohydrates. I put an example down here of bread. Bread is a type of carbohydrate. Also, plant material, cellulose, is a type of carbohydrate. So those are all carbohydrates, and we'll talk about what they are. Also, there are lipids. Lipids are your fats and oils. Proteins. So we talk about eating protein. You get proteins from meat. Proteins are a really important compound. And then nucleic acids, and over here, a great example of this, one that we're all familiar with, is DNA, or deoxyribose nucleic acid. So we use nucleic acid at the end there, DNA. So those are the 4 types of organic compounds that we need to know a lot about in order to understand living things. And we're going to take these one at a time. So we're first going to talk about carbohydrates. But before that, we need to understand some important vocab. There are 2 terms that we are going to use all the time, and these terms are monomer and polymer. Monomer and polymer. Now the prefix mono, M-O-N-O, you remember that from biology, that means one, and poly, P-O-L-Y, means many. So monomer is one part of a large molecule, and you'll see these large molecules are made of a bunch of pieces put together. Okay, so a bunch of pieces put together. This single piece is called a monomer. So one piece of this big molecule is called a monomer, and this together is called the polymer. So polymers are large molecules made up of monomers. The best way I can conceptualize this or understand it is by thinking about Lego blocks. When we think about Lego blocks, we can build these sweet houses or these large complex structures, and we use little blocks. And we put them together in different combinations and ways, and from that we build a big, huge thing. Well, these Lego blocks, each individual Lego block is a monomer. So a monomer. And when we put these blocks together and we form this huge complex, in this case a stairwell, that stairwell is our polymer. If you ever go to the Mall of America and you see the Lego world, yeah, you can look at all the sweet Lego polymers made up of a bunch of little blocks. So monomer, one piece of a large molecule. A polymer is the large molecule itself. Okay, let's talk about carbohydrates. Well, I just want to get through carbohydrates today. I want you to have a good understanding of carbohydrates, and then we'll stop. So carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, the main thing carbohydrates are used for in living things is energy. So carbohydrates are a great energy molecule, and usually in our metabolism we convert everything to glucose. We convert it to glucose and then convert glucose into energy. So we convert a lot of things to carbohydrates and then convert them to energy. So carbohydrates are an important energy molecule. And the monomers of this are what's going to be called a simple sugar. So we're going to see a bunch of these simple sugars, or what we call monosaccharides. Okay, so a monosaccharide is a simple sugar, and those are our monomers. And when we put them together, we make polysaccharides. I have down here, this is hard to see, this kind of got crazy. Down here, an example of a monomer. This down here is glucose. Let's try to write glucose. So down here, this big molecule that you can kind of see shaded in here, this is glucose. And we notice this is our structure that we talked about, where we don't write in the carbons or the hydrogens, our line structure. So right here I can add in the carbons. So we notice our 5-carbon ring with oxygen as part of it. And then we have this flag out here. And then we also have hydroxyl groups out here. And then there'd be hydrogens in here that we don't write in. So this is our glucose molecule. Glucose is a monomer. This is a simple sugar or a monosaccharide. If we take two of these monomers, or if we take these two monosaccharides and put them together, we get what's called a disaccharide, right? The prefix di means two, mono means one, monosaccharide, one sugar, disaccharide, two sugars. So here's an example. Glucose is a monosaccharide. And here's that glucose molecule that we just saw here. And it's a monosaccharide. And then over here, fructose. Fructose is also a monosaccharide. Fructose is fruit sugar. So fruits are high in fructose. And we notice that with this fruit sugar here, there's a bond. They're linked together. See how they have this? It's called an oxygen bridge, because the oxygen bridges the two atoms. So they're linked together. They're holding hands. That's a disaccharide. This thing is a polymer. This disaccharide is a polymer, and glucose and fructose are both monomers. Examples of disaccharides, things that we're familiar with, and these aren't uncommon. Sucrose, so table sugar, is an example of a disaccharide. Lactose, or milk sugar, is an example of a disaccharide. Maltose, malt powder, if you guys like malts from Dairy Queen or Red Robin or wherever, that is malt sugar. Okay? If we put a whole bunch of these monomers together in a big long chain, we form what's called a polysaccharide. Poly again means many, saccharide means sugars. So this is polysaccharide. And the things that we're going to form are things like starch. Starch is this huge, long, complex molecule that plants use to store energy. So a potato plant is mainly starch. So it's going to be storing tons of energy in that potato. Glycogen, this is how humans store energy, and we store it in our liver. So if we have a lot of excess sugar in our blood, we'll store it as glycogen for a while, and then eventually we'll change it over to fat. And then cellulose down here, this is plant structure. So if we look at a tree, here's a cross section of a tree with its rings. The woody section of a tree is all made of cellulose. And that's a type of polysaccharide that allows that tree to grow up strong. A lot of times cellulose is non-digestible. We can't digest cellulose. So yeah, cellulose. So those are all types of polysaccharides or polymers, and they're formed by linking many monomers together. We're going to stop there for today. We'll talk about lipids and proteins and stuff next time. If you have any questions, class, feel free to let me know. Make sure you understand this idea of monosaccharides being linked together, holding hands by this oxygen bridge to form polysaccharides, and that's really important. Okay, thanks a lot, class. If you have any questions,